Hi 1C, this is something that happened to me at the arcade about 3 years ago. If I could put it into words how I feel about what happened, I would just tell you that after that day, I never went back to the arcade again. Back then, I used to go to the arcade maybe once every few months. I don't remember exactly why I went to the arcade the day this incident happened, but I think there was a new game that came out that I wanted to play. After work, I headed straight to the arcade. Once I arrived, I played various games and was enjoying myself. Eventually, I got a little tired and crouched down in a corner to rest for a while. While I was sitting, a man walked up to me and stood still. From my view on the floor, he looked ordinary. But even today, I remember the twisting feeling in my stomach the moment I looked up and saw his face. He asked me,
"Want to buy a doll?"
I asked what kind of doll it was. He looked around and then showed me his phone. On the screen, it was a picture of something like a display case with people's heads on it. No torso, just the heads. I got goosebumps. It looked so real that I felt sick. But of course, I thought these were dolls, not real people. He whispered to me,
"If you're interested in buying, send me a message."
He gave me a small business card that had his email address on it, and written on the card was dolls for sale. I kept my calm on the outside and told him, these dolls aren't really my style, and tried to leave by scooting around him. But he grabbed my shoulder and kept talking.
"Then why don't you come to my office with me? If you actually see them, I'm sure you'll want one."
He laughed and mimicked slitting someone's throat by dragging his thumb across his neck. At that point, I just walked away. He watched me walk away and then left the building, and I went back to playing. I think I'd played for quite a while after that. Eventually, it was past midnight and there were hardly any people left in the arcade. I was tired, so I decided to leave and started walking out of the arcade to go home. As I walked out, I saw a group of shady-looking guys in the parking lot. At first, they were talking and I thought they didn't notice me, but just a second or two later, I saw the guy from before among them. He pointed at me and said some words that I couldn't hear, and all at once, they turned towards me. Their murderous grins burned through me, and the twisting feeling in my stomach came back in full force. I pretended not to see them and shuffled quickly into my car, but then I heard the man yell,
"Hey, I want to display your head in my office too. What do you think?"
The guys all started laughing maniacally. When I turned around in surprise, he was staring at me, waving me over to where they were standing. I kept going towards my car, but the guys around him were slowly walking towards me. I turned around and saw them pulling syringes out of their jacket pockets. My heart sank, but I pretended not to care and started fast walking towards my car. Then they started running towards me, clearly trying to outpace me. Then a van started up and started coming towards me. The men in the van were wearing aprons, like those worn by butchers. I ran like crazy at that point to get in the car. I got in and immediately turned it on and stepped on the gas. As I left the parking lot, they stopped chasing me. I watched them in my rearview mirror. Some of the men went to the van and took a cooler out of the trunk. I was still scared, but I was curious to know what they were doing. So I parked the car about a block away and watched them with binoculars I kept in the car from when I go hiking. After a while, they met another man and gave him the cooler, and the man gave them a black bag. Then they took a bunch of cash out of the black bag and divided it amongst themselves. It definitely seemed like something illicit was going on, but I didn't want to make a big deal out of it since I was still freaked out from how they all approached me. After that, I just headed home and tried not to think too hard about it. From that day on, I never went near that arcade again, and thankfully I never saw those men again. But since that day, I've occasionally wondered about the truth of what I saw and experienced that day. Was the photo the man showed me real? What was in that cooler? And what I've wondered most is, what on earth would they have done to me if I hadn't gotten away? Hello, my name is Angie. I am from Albania, and this is a story from when I was 11 or 12 years old. It was summertime, and my family and I were staying at my grandparents' house for the weekend. It also happened that my aunt and her kids would be staying there for the weekend too. One night at around 10 p.m., my cousins and I decided to play hide and seek. It didn't take long to find everyone, except for my cousin Edith. For context, behind my grandparents' house on either side is a tall wall. No one is supposed to be able to enter the yard from back there. The only way in is from the front of the house. My grandparents live in a rural area, and criminal activities are often reported to take place there. And even though the walls were there, As kids, we were still scared to go too far back there. We were all working together to find Edith when I saw a hand in the bushes at the back of the house, and I thought it was Edith. I did find it quite a bit odd because the hand seemed to be rather big and all my cousins were around my age, but I didn't really question it. When I saw the hand, I screamed, "I know where Edith is!" I was quite proud of myself for finding her, but just a moment later, I heard Edith get up and yell, "You found me!" She was actually hiding in a bush around the front of the house. I was terrified because everyone was in front of the house at that moment. We all were scared to go to the back, so I couldn't help but to think, who was that back there? But I didn't say anything to anyone about what I saw. After that game, our grandma called us to come inside since it was very dark. Edith and another cousin, Sarah, and I slept together on a mattress on the floor, with a window right above us. Just like everyone, we stayed up late talking. I did tell them about what I saw, but they told me I was lying and just continued on with the girl talk. I got tired at around 1 a.m. and so did my cousins. As I was falling asleep, I heard some unexpected footsteps outside the house. I tried to ignore them, but they didn't stop and were getting louder. When I got fed up with the noises, I got up and looked out the window, expecting it to be my cousins pranking us. But what I saw were two unfamiliar men. When I made eye contact with them and realized what was happening, I screamed at the top of my lungs as loud as I could. The men ran away and everyone in the house woke up. I started crying and explained what happened to my mother, but she just told me I probably had a nightmare. I was so frustrated that no one believed me. As a teenager, I forgot that this all happened until almost 10 years later when I was at a family reunion at my grandparents' house. Being there brought back those memories, and while talking with my grandfather, I jokingly mentioned the scary things I saw that night. Then my grandfather told me the truth behind it all. Apparently, at the time of the incident, my grandfather was involved in some illegal activities and some people were after him, but no one in the family knew. To this day, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't woken up.